Hi, my name is Reagan Baker, and my research project is titled How Cultural Beliefs Influence Malaria Treatment in Rural Uganda. For this project, I chose to focus on disease and medicine from an anthropological perspective. More specifically, I wanted to look at malaria treatment in rural Uganda and understand how culture can influence the decisions people make when they become sick. My main research question was, how do cultural beliefs influence malaria treatment in rural Uganda? My thesis is that cultural beliefs and traditional healing practices continue to influence how many people treat malaria alongside or instead of modern medicine. This can be connected to long-standing traditions, trust in local healers, and limited access to healthcare. I chose this topic because healthcare decisions are not always based on only biology or the availability of medicine. Culture can influence how people understand illness, who they trust for treatment, and what types of remedies they choose to use. This makes the topic especially relevant to medical anthropology, which examines the relationship between culture, health, illness, and healthcare practices. There is also a human-environment relationship involved in this topic. Environmental conditions can influence malaria and access to treatment. In my original research planning, I considered factors such as climate, mosquito bites, access to clean water, and limited access to healthcare. These factors can interact with cultural beliefs and influence people's experiences with illness and treatment. For my research methods, I conducted a literature review rather than collecting information directly from individuals. I reviewed information from peer-reviewed journal articles, ethnographic research, and scholarly books related to malaria, traditional medicine, cultural beliefs, and healthcare in rural Uganda. As I reviewed this information, I organized my findings into several major themes. These included cultural beliefs, traditional healing practices, healthcare accessibility, and environmental factors. I then looked for patterns across the different sources to determine how these factors influence malaria treatment decisions. One of the strongest patterns I found was the importance of traditional healers. My research showed that traditional healers can be trusted and respected members of their communities. They may also be more accessible than hospitals or other healthcare facilities. Because of this, some individuals may seek help from a traditional healer before seeking treatment from a clinic or hospital. Another important finding was the use of herbal remedies in traditional medicine. The literature I reviewed indicated that herbal remedies may be used to manage malaria symptoms. In some situations, traditional remedies may be used before modern medical treatment, while in other situations, traditional and modern treatments may be used together in unison. However, my research also showed that these decisions are not influenced by culture alone. Access to healthcare is another major factor. For people living in rural communities, the distance to a healthcare facility can make receiving modern medical treatment more difficult for them. Transportation and the cost of treatment can also create barriers. Because of these challenges, traditional medicine may sometimes be a more accessible option. This means that it would be too simple to assume that people use traditional medicine only because of their cultural beliefs. Instead, their decisions may be influenced by a combination of cultural traditions, trust, cost, distance, and the availability of healthcare services. Another important finding was the role of family traditions and cultural understandings of illness. People's beliefs about health and illness can influence how they respond when they experience symptoms. Treatment decisions may be connected to knowledge and practices that have been passed down through families and communities. Overall, my findings supported my original thesis. The research suggested that malaria treatment decisions in rural Uganda are influenced by both culture and healthcare accessibility. Cultural beliefs and trust in traditional healing practices are important, but practical barriers to modern healthcare also play a very significant role. There are some limitations to my research that are important to acknowledge. My project was based entirely on previously published literature, so I did not personally conduct interviews or observations in Uganda or to anyone who has previously lived there. Also, some of the studies included in the literature may have focused on very specific villages or regions. Because of this, their findings cannot necessarily be applied to every rural community in Uganda, just parts of it. I also have to consider my own cultural perspective when interpreting the research. Coming from a background where modern medicine is generally the dominant approach to healthcare could influence how I initially view traditional healing practices. From an anthropological perspective, it is important to understand these practices within their own cultural context instead of automatically judging them according to another culture's standards. The larger implication of my research is that successful healthcare programs should consider the culture of the communities they are designed to serve. Simply making modern medicine available may not address every factor that influences healthcare decisions. Understanding why people trust traditional healers and why they use particular remedies can help healthcare professionals better understand the communities they are working with. At the same time, improving access to affordable healthcare could address some of the practical barriers identified in my research. Healthcare strategies may be more effective than they recognize both the importance of local cultural practices and the challenges people face in accessing medical services. This project contributes to medical anthropology because it demonstrates that illness cannot always be understood through biology alone. To fully understand how people respond to disease, we also need to consider their culture, traditions, environment, and access to resources. If I were to continue this research in the future, I would like to include interviews or direct ethnographic observations. This could provide a better understanding of individual experiences and allow people living in rural Uganda communities to explain their own beliefs and treatment reasons directly. In my conclusion, my research shows that malaria treatment choices in rural Uganda are shaped by multiple interconnected factors: cultural beliefs, trust in traditional healers, herbal medicine, family traditions, cost, distance, and healthcare accessibility can all influence how people respond to malaria. The main takeaway from my research is that understanding healthcare requires understanding culture. Recognizing the cultural and practical reasons behind treatment decisions can help create healthcare approaches that are more informed and better suited to the needs of the communities they are intended to serve. Thank you.